And welcome on into our next season preview show. We're talking all about the Nashville Predators, their 2023-2024 season preview. And Nashville's a really interesting team in the fact that a lot of stuff has happened since the Predators last took the ice. Obviously, David Poyle, their general manager since day one of the franchise, retired. Taking over for him is their original coach, who had been there for quite a few years. I don't have the exact number here, but he had been with them for a long time. Barry Trotz taking over as general manager. So that's a huge move right there. And then getting Andrew Brunette in as coach and getting rid of John Hines. So there's a lot of behind the scenes management changes here for the Predators. They had made the playoffs 8 years in a row before last year's um, playoff miss. So they'll be looking to get back to the playoffs this year, and we will take a look now at them, and we'll discuss at the end if we think they'll make the playoffs this year. But we'll start with additions and subtractions. So not including the coaching and general manager subtractions and additions, just the players. Um, we have some big moves. Ryan Johansson traded to Colorado. I think that's an addition by subtraction for the Predators. Borowiecki retired. Matt Duchene got bought out, which was a bit of a surprise. He went to Dallas. And it could potentially be just a change of scenery and a change of locker room, kind of the feel of the locker room. I think was the main reason for that. Duchesne still has gas left in the tank, so it was more probably a personnel type move than on the ice type move. And then they got rid of some depth guys that I don't think will overly hurt them in the bottom four guys. Additions: Luke Shen, a little bit of a defenseman addition there. Ryan O'Reilly, who was with Toronto for their playoff run and signed with Nashville, which is really interesting. And we'll have to see how he does this year. In the Minnesota show, I said the one player that Minnesota lost that I really did not like and really did not want to lose was Gustav Nyquist. I knew as soon as the Wild traded for him, even though he was injured, I just knew, I just had this gut feeling that he was going to play extremely well for Minnesota. That's exactly what he did. But unfortunately, with the Parise Suter buyouts, the Wild did not have the cap space to keep Gustav Nyquist around. So he comes here to Nashville. And we'll see where he is in the projected lineup. But it'll be a bit surprising, I think, for some people where he's projected to play when the season starts. But I really like him. And then Denis Gurianov, another addition. So even though the subtractions list is longer than the additions list, I think overall it was a good offseason here for the Predators. Just how will chemistry mesh and how long will it take these new guys to get accustomed to their teammates? That'll be an important um, factor in things for them this year. But Mossy, welcome back in for this show. What do you think here about the Nashville Predators, their additions and subtractions this offseason?
Yeah, just want to touch kind of on one you said there, the subtractions. Johansson and Duchesne being the two big ones out. Borowiecki, Leonard, Sanford, Foot, Ratcliffe. They're just kind of depth players, nothing really there. Adding Ryan O'Reilly in there, Nyquist, like you said, Shen, it kind of fits those pieces in. I feel you don't the Matt Duchene, getting rid of Matt Duchene, like you said, it was more of a locker room kind of change up. You get rid of that contract off the books too. You have about 8 mil, 7.9 of cap space, but I don't. You had more that's gone out, but just by looking at it, there's more out. But really, you've only lost two players, and what you brought in, I feel pretty much trades that out. Luke Shen will be serviceable. He did exactly what he had to do for the Leafs. I feel it'll sort of be the same way. Ryan O'Reilly, centerman too. He'll fill in that first line spot, I imagine. Serviceable too. Nyquist, he had a good season last year, decent season last year. I expect him to have a better one this year. And Garyanov too, decent as well. Yeah, I feel the subtractions and the additions sort of equals out. I mean, if you want to look, Duchesne and Johansson, Duchesne had 22 goals, Johansson had 12. So if you want to look at it like that, they had what, 22, 34 goals last year. So can these additions that they add really make up for that? Probably. We'll see in time, but I feel it about equals out.
Yeah, and for Gustav Nyquist, it'll be about staying healthy because he's had injury issues. But Gurionov has potential there, and Ryan O'Reilly um, is moving on from different teams, from team to team lately, but maybe he'll fit in really well with Nashville. We will have to see.
That's what I feel too.
Yeah. But looking at the next segment here, which is upcoming free agents, um, you will notice that the Predators have a long list of forwards that are upcoming free agents. Three guys on defense there, one goaltender, and Kevin Lankinen. I'll start with Kevin Lankinen because I think that's pretty easy. You can let him go in free agency, or you can bring him back on a 1 year deal. Obviously, we'll get to possible lineup in the next segment. Yaroslav Askarov is the top goaltending prospect in the Nashville organization, but he was being floated around in trade rumors. So I don't know how Nashville feels about him long term, and that could definitely affect how they treat Lankinen and their goaltending position going into next season. Tyson Barrie, a good offensive defenseman, a UFA. With the cap going up 5 million, and like you said, Mossy, the Predators have a bit of cap space here. I think if Barrie has a good season, they'll look to re-sign him, keep him around. Same with Carrier. He's a good defensive guy. Dante Fabro, one of the Predators' top ranked prospects coming into the when he started in the NHL. The last few years, he's kind of been trending a little bit downwards, but RFA should be able to get him to a good price, good contract, and hopefully he continues to develop. Looking at forwards, Thomas Novak, he's a UFA. You definitely want to sign him. He's still at a good age. Juuso Parssinen, RFA. Those are two guys that I made some money on props with Nashville last year. Was Thomas Novak and Juuso Parssinen. So if I am the Nashville Predators, those are two guys that I am signing. They would be focuses of mine. Philip Tomasino, he's an RFA as well. You're going to want to re-sign him. Yakov Trenin provides a good defensive, physical game on the third or fourth line. So you want to keep him as well. The rest of the guys, Gurionov it'll determine how he does this year, whether he stays around. And then the other guys, depth guys, Nashville could let them go. Barry Trotz may want to continue to mold his team. Obviously, his first general manager's job as being a head coach for many years. So he may very well want to continue to mold this team into what he wants. So we may see more of these guys go. We may see guys stay. Depends on how they play this year for the Preds. Mossy, what do you think upcoming free agents for the Predators? What do you think they should be? Who do you think they should be focusing on re-signing going into next year?
Yeah, you said it pretty much perfect. I'll start with the goalie, Kevin Lankinen. He's a good goalie. He had a 916 save percentage last year in 19 games. Him and Saros, I would say, are really the backbone or the core maybe to this team. They can win you games, at least Saros. But depending on the price of Lankinen, you might be able to keep him around or get rid of him. It depends, like you said, with Askarov too, being in trade rumors, at least at the draft. It's interesting what happens there. Tyson Barrie, he'll fit in an offensive role this year. You don't, with the cap going up, you might be able to make it work. You'd like to, and him playing with Yossi as well will probably increase the stats quite a bit. Um, I mean, he'll be wanting a decent paycheck after that, but cap going up, hopefully it'll work. Fabro too, third pairing defenseman. Um, he had potential coming in, like you said. It didn't really kind of pan out to what it is. You could sign him. He's probably not going to want a whole lot. Going to the forwards, like you said, Novak and Parsonen. You want to get those guys signed. Tomasino as well. I figure Tomasino might have a breakout season this year. I'm expecting him to do a lot, or at least more than last year. Those three guys are your main ones. Gary Onoff, depending on how he does. I mean, he had 17 points last year. Wasn't great, but new team. We'll see what happens. Maybe keep him around. But yeah, those Novak, Parsonen, and Tomasino, possibly Barry, depending on how he does and how much he asks. And same situation with Lankinen. However, you have to still consider Askarov being in the mix.
Yeah, and Lankinen didn't really do all that well in Chicago, but played pretty good for Nashville. When you look at it last year, let me get actually his record up here. Last year he was okay, 9-8-1, but a 2.75 goals against average, 916 save percentage. So very similar numbers to what Saros had.
Yes.
Saros just went 33-23. Saros played in 64 games last year. So if the Predators are smart, they'll want to get that number down. As
Yeah.
we've been discussing in previous shows, it's becoming much more of a 1A, 1B NHL now, especially with a lot of back to backs, a lot more back to backs than in the past. You want to play more of your goaltenders. But obviously, when you have UC Saros, I get the Predators want to play him. But we'll see what Andrew Burnett does now as coach. If he gives a Lankinen more of a backup or more of a role here as the backup. Askarov, um, his status is unknown. He did play one game last year where he gave up 4 goals in the loss, 35 saves, 886 save percentage. But that was one game. You can't judge him on that and say he's a flop and get rid of him. But if the Predators decide to trade him, there will be trade partners. Um, there will be teams that are looking for a young goalie. I'm sure that will take him. Looking at the defense, Yossi and Shen, McDonough and Barry, Fabro and Carrier. That's a pretty good defensive um, set for the Nashville Predators. They've always been one of those teams, kind of like Minnesota as well, that just seems to have good defensemen. They just seem to be a good defensive team for their history. Looking at the offense here, the forwards, as I said earlier on, you might be a bit surprised where Gustav Nyquist is projected to play, and that's on the top line with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly. That's a really interesting line. Um, I think if it was a second line, um, I think it could like it's a really good line, but I don't think it's top line. Um, I don't think it's a top line on a Stanley Cup team. I think it's more of a second line. Yeah, Forsberg is probably the best player on the team, and I really do like Nyquist, but he's much more of a second line player. On the second line, Gurianov, Novak, and Evangelista. I've already said I really like Novak, so he is projected to be on the second line. Parsonen played on the second line last year. We could see him move up as well. Cody Glass on the third line center. Um, how he plays will be really important for Nashville. He was a very high rated prospect that's never really got it going. If you're right, Mossy, Tomasino has a good year. That third line could be sneaky for player props because there'll probably be tons of value on those three guys. So if they do play really well, you can probably get some nice prices on point props and that kind of stuff. The fourth line, physical fourth line. Colin Sissons has a bit of offensive ability as well, but he's a good fourth line center for the Preds. Overall, this team does have question marks, as I said, with chemistry. and what's going to happen in the goaltending. But we'll get to future bets, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on if this team's a playoff team or not. Mossy, what do you think here about this possible lineup for the Preds? What do you think overall about their lineup?
Yeah, starting with goalies. Obviously, I don't think you have anything to worry there. Saros carries the load. Had a 919 save percentage last year. You said he played 64 games, which is large. They uh, they should maybe let Lankinen take a couple more of those games if they want to have some playoff ambitions. Yoshi, Shen, McDonough, Barry, Fabro, Carrier. I can see throughout the season Barry and Shen maybe flip flopping from second to third or second and first, depending on how things are gelling. If Barry goes in that first line defense pairing, he's going to be putting more of an offensive role. He's in that right now, I guess you could say with McDonough, but him and Yossi as a pairing would be kind of crazy. Shen does exactly what you need him to do, so that works as well as first line. Fabro Carrier, I mean, it is what it is. It's serviceable third line pairing, but it I feel their first two defensive pairings are good. The third one gets a little question marks, but I think it's manageable. You get into forwards, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist. O'Reilly coming in there, filling in, or no, I can't say filling in, but replacing Matt Duchene, who got the buyout. If you want, I feel if the Nashville, you want them to be successful, you want Forsberg to be healthy, players like that, so they can really, like I mentioned, they're 3 points out from that wild card spot. If he's healthy, who knows how that would have played out. Evangelista, I'm actually really like that guy. He had a nice season last year with Novak or playing now, and Garyanov. That's an interesting one. Second line winger. That's another one I can see, Terry, where Parsonen and Garyanov might be able to switch depending on how that's gelling out. Tomasino, I'm expecting him to have a breakout year, as I mentioned earlier. At least from how he's been trending, you'd expect him to. I'd be a little disappointed if he didn't. They'd probably still end up re-signing him, like I talked about earlier. But Sissons, Trennan, and Sherwood, that's not a bad fourth line. It's a bit of grit, like you said. Sissons has some offensive ability. You get what you get with them, but yeah, I feel with Forsberg, you want him to be healthy, and it's interesting with Duchene leaving. We'll see how O'Reilly gets to kind of fill in that spot for a full season now with one team, and we'll see how that one manages.
For sure. And you're totally right about Evangelista. And people might not really, you might not notice him when you're looking at the Predators last year's stats because obviously he's way down the list or kind of in the middle of the list. But the reason for that is because he only played 24 games. So all these other players above him played a lot more 60, 70, 50, 80 some odd games. He played 24 games and had 15 points. So that's, and I think he was a +7 as well. So he had a pretty good record when he was out there. So we'll see if he does play on the second line. That'll be a good opportunity for him this year and for player props for him as well.
Yeah, and I think those two, just to touch back, Terry, I think those players like Evangelista, Nyquist, those are interchangeable too. Like I feel you can really mix those wingers up depending on the first three lines, and you might get different outcomes depending on who's who, right? Like I feel like Parson could easily slide up into that second line. Tomasino could, right? Where maybe Evangelista might jump up to the first at times. Like I feel those first three lines could fluctuate quite often this year.
Yeah, it'll be what Andrew Burnett wants to start off with, and because this is just a projected line, we have no idea what the new coach Andrew Burnett is going to want to do. Things could be much different. So I
Yes.
totally agree with you on those top three lines being interchangeable. Looking at future bets, the next show on tomorrow will be St. Louis. And Nashville and St. Louis have very similar odds when it comes to point total, make playoffs. The President's Trophy, win division, win conference, win Stanley Cup are the exact same odds the last time I checked. So that's pretty interesting as well. To make the playoffs, Nashville is plus 160. Their point total is at 86.5 here. The Predators last year, let's get it up, had 92 points, 97 the year before. Of course, they shortened 2 seasons before that. The full season before that, they had 100. So they've been a 90 plus point team. Now their point total here is at 86.5. And I kind of like the over. I think Nashville will be around where they were last year in the early 90s. When it comes to making the playoffs, if you've watched the previous shows, I have said that I like Colorado and Dallas to fight for first and second in the Central, Minnesota to finish in third. And so the Predators, in if my predictions are right, will not have a spot in the top three of the division. So that would leave them a wild card spot to fight for against other teams in the Pacific Division, which is exactly what I think will happen here. I think Nashville will be fighting for a wild card spot. Plus 160 is pretty good value overall. The Predators have made a lot of changes this year, and I make the playoffs at plus 160. As I said, I think they're fighting for a spot. So, as you said, Mossy, the guy beside us there, Philip Forsberg, he needs to stay healthy for the Predators to make a playoff spot. And the guy below, Saros, needs to continue to play well. 28.5 is his win total. Last year, he had 33, obviously playing in 64 games. His 40 plus wins this year is plus 1800. So obviously he would have to have a really good season for that to cash. Forsberg to score 40 goals is plus 1000. But with his injury history, I'm not sure I'd want to go there. Who will have more points, Nashville or St. Louis? I like Nashville at minus 115. The Blues, which we'll get to tomorrow, have a higher ceiling and a lower floor, in my opinion. The Blues could fluctuate a lot more. They're really depend on goaltending, but we'll get to that tomorrow. But so I think who will have more points? I think Nashville will have more points, and I think make the playoffs at plus 160. And I like the point total over for the Predators. I think the chemistry will work out, and they'll hit 90 points as they have previously. Mossy, what do you think about future bets for the Predators this year?
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting where their total points is laid out 86.5. And I mean, they had 92 last year. But the problem is some people aren't comfortable laying 120 and letting it sit all year because there's not much value there, right? It's something like if you can take it, I like that bet personally. But do you want to have a minus 120 sit all year? I mean, it's up to you, but making playoffs at plus 160, that does have value considering nose minus 200, and I'd never lay that. I know they missed the playoffs last year only by a few points, 3 points. So at plus 160, I do like that. I'm not interested in the President's Trophy, win division, win conference, win Stanley Cup. I can't see none of that happening. Saros wins 28.5 at plus 100. It's one of those things as well. He had 33 wins last year. So I like that bet. Are they going to relieve him some of the duty and let Lankinen play, right? That's another question. I do like that, but you want to have a plus 100 sit all year, right? It's one of those things where I like those, but you can make up that money elsewhere throughout the season. But it's something definitely to look at. Forsberg to score 40 goals. He's going to have to he scored 40 goals once in his career, and it was 2 years ago. And you're kind of relying on him being healthy this whole season and for that to hit. I mean, I'm hoping he can stay healthy. If he has a big year, I'm sure he can hit 40. Saros 40 plus wins. That's tough. He had 33 last year, and I can't see him. I mean, playing any more games than he already did, playing 64 last year, right? So I can't. That number's not. I can't see it staying. Like it's not going to be 40 personally. Yossi to win the Norris. That's a little bit sneaky. at plus 1,800. It's not something I'd want to lay a unit on, but maybe quarter unit or something. It sounds a little crazy to say, but at this point in his career, it seems a little bit underrated with all these great defensemen and other teams and stuff. It's something to look at. Do I think he'll win the Norris? No, but I mean,
It
he's
would
always
need a
talked about.
Makar injury. A
Yeah, right.
Makar injury, if Makar was to get injured, but Makar's had injury history as well. But if Makar had a lengthy injury, then I think that you'll see when the Norris would have a lot more of a chance.
Yeah, right. He's talked about all the time. He's always in the mix. That's sort of what I mean about being kind of a sleeper defenseman. Even though he's great, he's just, I don't know. There's good defensemen in the league, right? So when you're comparing defenseman to defenseman, it gets a little tough like that. Who'll have more points? I think Nashville will, but again, do you want to lay minus 115 and have it sit all season? I don't know. The main bets I'm looking at though that I like would be to make playoffs at plus 160, and if you don't mind letting minus 120 sit and a plus 100 sit, I would look at the Saros wins over 28.5 and the total points over 86.5.
Awesome. And that is the Nashville Predators season preview show. Nicholas Earl will be coming up next to talk with Nashville Predators, so don't go anywhere. We'll have Nicholas Earl on. Make sure to give Mossy a follow. His link to his Twitter is in the description below, so make sure to give him a follow. And next up to talk about the Nashville Predators is Nicholas Earl at Earl Sports Bets. Make sure to find his Twitter in the link in the description below. So make sure to give him a follow. Nick, we're going to be talking here about the Nashville Predators, a team that has seen quite a bit of off-season change, of course, with their general manager of their entire existence retiring and having a former head coach, Barry Trotz, now taking over. And he was a long-term coach in Nashville for a long time, so now he's getting his first shot at a GM, and we'll get your opinion on what he did here so far in the offseason with additions and subtractions. What do you think overall about the additions and subtractions this offseason for Nashville?
Yeah, I like the additions of Ryan O'Reilly and Gustav Nyquist. They're going to be on their top line. I think that they can make a decent impact on this team. I like the one thing with O'Reilly I like is that it gives them a nice little veteran presence because they kind of got rid of a little bit of veteran presence there with Johansson and with Duchesne, which I think it was about time for them to move past the Duchesne, the Johansson, and there was Granlund and I'm trying to remember the other guy they got rid of. But that core was not going to win a cup or anything along those lines. So I think it was a good thing for them to try to rebuild somewhat, retool, rebuild. I don't know if this is a full-on rebuild where they're tanking, but they're kind of retooling. I don't mind the Luke Shen acquisition as well. I don't know if they're I don't know. They may have gotten slightly worse, but I mean, I think for the future they'll be better off, but probably not this year.
Yeah, people weren't sure if they were rebuilding or retooling, and then you hear Askarov being possibly dealt at the draft, and when you're going to possibly be thinking about trading a high prospect goaltender, that's kind of makes you think that they're not rebuilding and they're trying to
Yeah.
win now. So we'll kind of see if anything happens with that later on in the season. But looking at upcoming free agents, they have a big forward list. Now, of course, a lot of these guys are depth guys. There's some RFAs as well that they'll be re-signing. A few defensemen, and then Kevin Lankinen, their backup goaltender. What do you think should be Nashville's main focus here in the offseason in re-signing?
Yeah, probably Tyson Berry. I'd probably be the top guy here. He's going to be one of your top defensemen that they got in the Ekholm trade. So he's somebody I think you should try to keep around. Lankinen, I can give or take on him because they have their prospect goalie coming up, Askarov, and I think him and Saros could be a decent duo if they choose to keep Saros. is another thing, is whether or not they're going to keep him. I like Tomas Nino. He was somebody who was kind of like a sneaky good player for them last year. Overall, I mean, maybe Guryanov, maybe Novak probably is another one that they should probably look to sign. He's one of your top 6 centermen. So probably those guys. But it all depends on what this team wants to do going forward. If this team's going to rebuild, then probably not many of these guys get re-signed. If the team's looking to retool, they probably re-sign a couple more of these guys. So it all depends on what this team does, honestly.
Yeah, and not really knowing what direction they're going in, it's kind of hard to predict upcoming free agents. But possible lineup here for the Predators. I said on the Minnesota Wild show how disappointed I was that the Wild, that Gustav Nyquist moved on out of Minnesota. It was just a price contract type of thing. Now he's here in Nashville and projected to be on the top line with O'Reilly and Forsberg. Nick, what do you think about this possible lineup for the Predators projected for the season?
I think that top line is kind of nice. I like Forsberg. He's somebody who I thought there was going to, if they were going to retool this offseason or rebuild, he was going to be gone. I'm surprised he's still there. I like him with O'Reilly and Nyquist, though. Novak and Evan Gilista. I can't pronounce that person's name. I'm sorry. But they looked pretty decent last year. And I kind of like that third line with Glass and Tomasino. So I think they have decent depth. They could be a sneaky team. Maybe. They still got, I want to say, a top 10 at least defenseman with Roman Josi there. And they got a decent one with Tyson Barrie on the second line as well. And they got an elite goaltender there with UC Saros. Yes, he is elite. I truly believe he is. He's a top 5, maybe top 7 goaltender when it comes to Vezina conversations. I believe he was this year. This team has the opportunity to be a wild card team, but they also have an ability to struggle off the rip and tear it down and rebuild. So I think this Nashville Predators team could either be a fringe playoff team or a bottom feeder. So it depends on what they do early, but I don't mind this lineup.
Awesome. I think something that's really important for this lineup is Forsberg and Nyquist staying healthy.
Yes.
Now, I know talking about it on most shows, you hear that where me or someone else will say this team needs to stay healthy because all teams need to stay healthy. But Forsberg and Nyquist both have past injury issues, so it is important for them, as I said here, to stay healthy. Going on to the next segment here, which is future bets for the Nashville Predators. And the Predators start off the season with 3 of their first 5 games on the road, then have a home streak there a little bit as well. A big home streak in November, where they have 5 home games in a row and then another 3-game homestand. So they've got some home games in November. It'll have to be to see how the beginning of October goes for this team going into next year. And then looking at it for the point totals, 86.5. What do you think here, Nick, for the future bets here for the Predators?
I really have no interest in futures with this team because of what I said last slide. This team could either be a fringe wild card team or this team could be sellers at the deadline and be really bad. So it all depends on how you think this team starts out the gate. I have really no interest because the range is so wide for this team that I really have no interest in futures for this team. I wish I had something here, but I mean, I really have a tough time coming up with what this Nashville Predators team truly is. And this is a team that is an easy pass for any type of futures for me.
All right. Yeah, they were a first-round exit team for a long time, obviously missing the playoffs last year. Plus 160 to make the playoffs. I think this team could flirt with the wild card spot.
I think so as
there's a little
well
bit of
because that
value.
Central Division's really weak, in my opinion. So I can definitely see it.
Yeah. But that is the Nashville Predators season preview show. Make sure to give everyone in the description a follow. And thank you, everyone, for watching the Nashville Predators season preview show. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this NHL season preview show. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as we continue on breaking down all 32 NHL teams, which will lead to the regular season when the Getting Wild with Terry and Friends NHL betting show will return. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, make sure to follow everyone in the description below that was on today's show to show them some support. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.